Welcome again to Pro Podcast. My name is Paul Wafula. Here's a show where we go behind the scenes to tell you the stories about the story makers in the newsrooms in this country and just get to understand what really is the story behind journalists. Today we are joined by Mr. John Njiru. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, so John, last time I saw you, you were not wearing glasses.
Quite an interesting story, Paul.
Okay.
So I was in this hotel, and it was about time to pay for my drinks, and the Lipa na M-Pesa was at the far end. And I walk up to the post so that I can be able to pay. And all the guys that were with me there were asking, "Are you not able to read there?" And you guys, are you able to read there? And they were like, yeah, we are able to read. And it dawned upon me that I might be blind. So the next day I checked in on Optica, and true to that, I was able to get specs. And once I put these specs, everything was in 3D.
So you could see clearly, and that's
Yes,
wonderful.
yes.
And why we are here is because of drinks. I know you've mentioned that you're about to pay your drinks. And before we get there, you've worked in newsrooms in this country before. How was your story there?
Yes, in 2012, I started working at Nation Media Group. My tenure lasted for 2 years, and it was quite an amazing experience working there. I have also had a short stint at Standard Media and various communication agencies.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're a trained actuarist.
Yeah.
So how did you get into the newsroom?
Yes, writing was a passion. It has always been since my high school years. And I remember when I was training I was doing actuarial science. I spent most of the time writing. In fact, I'm the one who introduced the official university magazine that still exists up to date. And after graduation, I was working at the then Pan-African Insurance, which is now Sanlam. And I found myself in newsroom as a business reporter. I've never left writing since then.
Oh, wonderful. That's good to hear. So, John, we've had quite an extensive discussion in my first episode around journalists and just alcohol. Are newsrooms basically predisposed to people drinking? I know in the olden days, the culture had been that newsrooms meet their sources, journalists meet their sources at mostly places, social places. Sometimes they take one beer for the road, and they get to get their stories. But would you say this has been extended too much? Would you say there has been pressure in the newsroom? Or how is your experience in terms of drinking as a journalist?
Drinking as a journalist is quite common in newsrooms. And this has been the culture. And I would say it's what I found. And I blended in well because it wasn't the first stab in drinking. I was quite good at it. But at the newsroom, there is immense pressure, not just to perform, but also to socialize. Okay. And with it comes a lot of need to fraternize with various drinks. And I did quite excel in that aspect with...
John, just to cut you short, when you say you quite excelled, what do you mean by you quite excelled? How much are you drinking here?
Yeah, It was quite a lot. Like, I would say EABL, East African Breweries Limited, um, first posted its losses once I stopped drinking. That's so I would comfortably
That's a
say
serious.
I can comfortably say I was the one propping EABL's bottom lines on my own. So, but to be serious, there was no alcohol that was not acceptable for my liking. I used to take anything that I could imbibe. I'm talking about vodkas, whiskeys, spirits, anything. And it gradually came to the point that I had to substitute the expensive one for the cheap one. The likes where those days people used to go blind and die of alcohol due to imbibing certain brands like Flying Horse. But I would still drink them. I would report that people are dying of drinking substandard alcohol, but I would find myself imbibing them so that I can keep still.
So you are literally preaching and taking wine yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was quite. It was an experience that I would say I found myself into. Um, it's not an experience that I would wish upon anyone, but at the same time, it's what I found to be existing at that point, and I indulged myself with the comfort that this is a lifestyle that I need to conform in.
So are you drinking Monday to Friday? Are there specific days you're drinking?
I used to drink Monday to Monday, 24 hours. I used to have a small pub even in the house. And I used to distill my own drink. Like, I used to find ways to increase the quantity with the available products that were at that time that I could afford. So increase the quantity. I was very good at it. Like, there was no point at which I was sober, especially my last days of newsroom. That is, let's say, 1 year to 2014. The entire 2014. Remarkably, I don't remember much about 2014 because I was high all the time.
I mean, is there a reason why you are drinking this much? And I mean, you are a little manufacturer of beer in your own house.
I would say that there was the need for me to drink at that point. The body asked for it. Once or twice I tried to stop because I could see how it was affecting not just my productivity, but my relationship with the people around me, and also my lifestyle. Because 3 times I'd had car accidents. It was much later that I was diagnosed with alcoholism. So alcoholism can come in 2 ways. It can either be genetic, or it can be due to when the mind is seeking to be excited or to be rewarded. So for me, I was able to be diagnosed with genetic alcoholism, and I understood. I understood because from where I come from my family, all the male offsprings have either perished due to alcoholism or anything around alcoholism.
I think that is a good place to take a break. And this is Pro Podcast. You are listening to stories behind the story makers in newsrooms in Kenya. These are stories around journalists, stories about people who actually are on your screens every day, the stories that you don't get to hear that we bring to you here live. with Pro Podcast. We'll take a quick break. Welcome back to Pro Podcast. We're here with a gentleman called Njiru. We are discussing the stories around newsmakers, the people who actually bring to us stories every day in our newspapers, in our radio, in our television stories stations. But we never get to hear their stories and their daily struggles and things that actually define them. John, you are a journalist. You must have been asked to cover some alcohol, or drug events, or probably police raids. And you have an alcohol challenge.
It was quite conflicting. I do recall this time when NTSA were holding alcohol raids across the country. And I was the one on the beat. So the then NTSA Director General, Francis Major, he calls me and tells me that we are going to do a raid today evening. I remember it was on a Friday. And the entire day, I was just on one bottle after another. And come at around 9 p.m., I get the call that will be along Langata Road. Are you around? I say, definitely. Let me come. And at that time, I was so drunk. I remember a colleague at that time was asking, where are you heading to? And I'm telling them, I have this bit I have to go to. And then, but you are in no condition of going there. So I still grabbed the keys, drove all the way to Langata Road. And when I reached there, I just opened the door and I fell out. And Francis was so furious. He couldn't understand that I'm coming to cover an alcohol raid while I was the one who was behind the wheel, high as kite.
Francis, you mean the Director General there?
Yes. He was quite disappointed, and I couldn't blame him. In fact, I had to wait for like 20 minutes for me to recover so that I can cover the event.
How did you cover it?
Yes, I was able to cover. That's another thing, and that's the most weird thing. I was very good at my job.
Okay.
Despite the unpleasantness that came with the struggles that I had, I was able to cover top events in the country. And I remember there is an award I won without even knowing when and how I wrote that article. That's how bad the situation was.
Wow, that's interesting. You must have driven into some walls.
If I was to share the experiences I had during my alcoholic years, would be filling more than 25 pages, Paul. But one of the times I remember was along Mombasa Road. I found myself entering Capital Center through its wall.
You mean you drove into the wall?
The car literally had to be stopped by the cars that were parked inside Capital Center. That's how bad it was.
Wow. How did that end?
The car was totaled completely. Somehow I emerged out with scratches. It was one of those moments that I felt I needed to slow down. But I just kept taking alcohol. It was impossible to stop.
Even after driving into the wall?
That was just one of the most initial experiences. I drove into some other walls here and there, some hedges, and once I drove into someone, and somehow that one sort of made me rethink strongly what to do about myself. But nothing bad happened. Okay, just the person was hospitalized and was discharged. I bore all the costs. But still, it became quite difficult to leave the culture of drinking.
You have had experiences in hotels. I mean,
The hotels were the main ones. I recall there was this moment at uh, Intercontinental uh, Intercontinental Hotel, the then Intercontinental Hotel, and it was an evening session, and there were cocktails left, right, and center. You know, the aspect of alcoholism is that you never stop until the bottle is empty. So people will have a glass or two, but if there was alcohol present, I would take all of them. It was an open bar. I drank to my full and to my fill, and I found myself hosted by the hotel. For the first time, I slept in a 5-star hotel, courtesy of my alcoholism, because I was not in any condition to leave the place. That's how bad it was.
I mean, you paid for the hotel?
No. It was, let's say it was a courtesy from out of them. And they didn't have an option because I was in a very bad shape. Yeah. Actually, at the hotel, what happened is that I fell into the swimming pool. There was this swimming pool, and I think I tripped, I fell, and I was unresponsive. They could see that there is a person there, and this person is not even trying hard to relieve themselves out of that situation. And there were other incidences. There was a time I was at Ukunda Coast, and I found myself in almost similar situation where I'm in a hotel hosted, I'm drinking, I find myself either in a pool or inside the ocean. They have to drag me out. And all these signs were there. I've never known why I survived all those instances. But I did, and I'm glad I'm here to talk about it.
Yeah, we are extremely glad, and I'm sure our viewers will actually benefit from this pro podcast today. This is our second episode on living with alcoholism in the newsroom, and just what it will take for you to actually take that turn as a journalist. And Njiru, before we get to how you were able to get your turn or your moment of truth, when you wake up in the morning, what happens? What are people saying about what happened at night? And how are you feeling about it?
Then or now?
Then. You drove into a wall. You are at Hilton or Intercon in the morning. What is going in through your mind? You've woken up in fresh sheets in a hotel.
First of all, every time you wake up extremely sober. And the first thing that you need is just alcohol to still yourself, to be comfortable. Because it was through alcohol that I was able to function. Thinking, speaking, and just understanding everything around me. I must have had alcohol in my system. So those moments, people would come and they would regale me with this tale of stoicism amidst these challenges, as if it was something to be celebrated. Like, man, you could have seen what you were doing last night. You were dancing with your boxers on top of the table. You told everybody that you are the king of I don't know where. And once in a while, there were people who would ask me to to really find help. But I was at the moment. It was also the moment. And there was nothing much I could do about it. So anytime I would wake up, I would find myself looking for the next bottle and stealing myself and going back to work as if nothing has happened.
When do you like wake up, or what happens to you that, you know, all of a sudden you are talking about alcohol as if it's the past tense, you stop drinking?
Yeah, this is my 7th year without taking alcohol.
Wow.
Yeah, my system is alcohol free. In 2016, after so many incidences, and the body has had bore the blunt of these escapades, I decided to check myself into a rehabilitation facility. And it was one of the most awakening moments. It was quite difficult because I knew that if I tried on my own, I wouldn't make it. Because I tried like 3 times on my own, but I kept finding myself back. And it was at the rehabilitation center that I was able to know what was affecting me. And it was also a peaceful moment. I had the most peaceful months in the rehab than I had ever had, because there were no friends, there were no relatives, there were no familiar faces around me. And it was a simple aspect of just recollecting, finding ways where what went wrong, how I started figuring my life. And it was at that moment that I was diagnosed with genetic alcoholism. And it all made sense. Since that time, I have been working hard to make sure that I don't take alcohol, because I know the results of that. What would happen if I do that? Yeah.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you,
Seven.
Paul.
I mean, I sit with you. I'm surprised you're asking for juice and water, and I'm like, hey, this is.
I'm a milk person.
Yeah.
I'm the cat. I'm the cat in the pub. Yeah. I still socialize. Nothing has changed in my life in terms of socialization. And I am happy where I am in terms of knowing my weaknesses. And through that weakness, I am able to avoid what can bring me down.
So to that journalist or that person watching who has either some challenges with either crossing over or stopping alcohol, just dealing with alcohol, I mean, what will you advise them? What is it that they first must do?
First of all, through my own experience, it's very difficult to know if you have a problem. It's extremely difficult. Even if someone comes and tells you that you have a problem with alcohol, somehow you will not feel it, or you'll not understand that. Secondly, if you are good in your work and you are able to drink, that is, you're a functional alcoholic, it becomes even difficult for you to know that you have a problem. I usually say, if you find yourself, like, one of the best ways, this is rudimentary. It's not, I wouldn't say this is the perfect method. But if you are able to see, let's say, a bottle of vodka, and you are not able to let it go, like if you start drinking it, you have to finish it, I can guarantee you that you have a problem. If you can tell yourself that I'll only take like 2 glasses or 3 glasses and you leave the rest, I'm talking about the bottle of vodka, then I don't think you have a problem yet. Yeah.
Thank you, John, for pointing that out. Viewers, unfortunately, we have to end this because of our time. Our time is up. If you like this podcast, please do what we always ask you to do. All podcasters will ask you to share, to like, and to leave your comment just to tell us what you feel about this podcast. If there's something interesting you really want us to discuss, or if you really want to be featured in this podcast, also please comment on our profile below this podcast, and we'll be happy to deal with that. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.